Pat Riley committed highway robbery during the NBA offseason, and you might be wondering, what does Nick mean by that? Well, on today's show, we're going to talk specifically on what Pat Riley did that will just steal from the rest of the NBA. So you might ask, what is that robbery? Well, it's actually the signing of UDFA Keshad Johnson. Johnson has been exceptional for the Miami Heat ever since they signed him. He's on a two-way contract, and Keshad Johnson, I believe, is going to be a difference maker for the Miami Heat in the foreseeable future. It'll be unclear to see what his impact will be this season as he is on a two-way contract, but I do think he is going to be someone that we look back at in 2 or 3 years and be like, how did Pat Riley actually land Keshad Johnson as a UDFA? And before we get into the rest of the video, like today's show for Keshad Johnson. Don't like it for me, like it for Keshad in the hopes that he is an impact player for this Heat rotation for years to come, that he have had a really good track record, I should say, with the UDFAs. Let's get 300 likes for Keshad Johnson. I believe we can do it. Come on. All right, so who is Keshad Johnson? Well, if you don't remember who exactly he is, he was a UDFA out of Arizona, and he did not play his college career entirely for the Wildcats. He actually played 4 years in the Mountain West for San Diego State and was part of that team that ultimately went to the college basketball championship game where they lost to UConn. He was given a two-way deal immediately after the 2024 NBA draft. He was actually, I believe, the first player to be announced that has signed. Usually the Heat work pretty quickly for the UDFAs, but it was about 1 or 2 minutes after the last pick of the second round was made that Shams Charania reported the Heat gave a two-way deal to Keshad Johnson, which means they ultimately really liked him if they gave him a two-way contract that quickly. And you can see just off the measurements how he would perfectly fit on this Miami Heat team. We know Eric Spoelstra likes his small ball fours where Keshad Johnson really slots in, but he could also play a little bit of the three due to his athleticism. He's 23 years old. He's 6'6" and a quarter with a 6'10" and a quarter wingspan, which is very, very good. You know how I like my plus wingspans, folks. And he's got some good weight to him as well, 224 pounds, which allows him to really play with a physicality that not everyone is able to play with. He is also an absolute freak athlete. You can just watch him on the court, the way he moves laterally, the way he gets up and down the court in transition situations. And then you could see it too with his vertical. It is unbelievable. And speaking of that vertical, he had a 42-inch max vert recorded at the NBA Combine, which was tied for first in the class. There was, I think, 3 or 4 players that ended up having a 42-inch vertical. He was one of them. Shockingly, Reed Shepard was one of them. And then I'm spacing. Devin Carter out of Providence also had a 42-inch vertical. So Keshad showing off those bunnies when he was testing for the NBA Combine. And I got to be honest, I really think it's unbelievable and unreal to believe that he did not get selected in the top, 58 picks, since there was 2 picks forfeited. It just made no sense to me that he was not drafted, considering of how productive he was for 3 or 4 plus seasons at the college level. And then you looked at his intangibles as well. I really liked Keshad Johnson, and I had a very positive scouting report on the UDFA. He was an explosive athlete. These are my notes, by the way. I did dumb them down. I usually got a little more creative with what I was actually writing down in my scouting notes. But to me, explosive athlete. Solid catch-and-shoot player as a senior at Arizona. Physical defender, can switch. And we saw that, right? He was unbelievably good at switching during the summer league portion of the offseason for the Miami Heat. He guarded centers on possessions. He guarded point guards. He guarded wings. He can do it all because of his physicality and athleticism. Now, the negatives with Keshad Johnson were these. I didn't think his three-point percentage at Arizona a year ago, which was 38%, was really an indicative of who he is as a shooter, because he was not a good three-point shooter in his first 3 or 4 seasons in college for San Diego State, but improved in his final year at Arizona. And I also marked down he's not someone that could really create for himself offensively, which I think we kind of saw to be the truth, at least right now, at Summer League as well. He did have a couple nice one-dribble drives to the elbow and pull-up jumpers off couple passes, but it's not like someone who's going to take off the dribble and create for others and himself. And you see at the bottom of your screen, I had him ranked as the 48th overall prospect in the draft, which would have given him a draftable grade, on my opinion. And I also compared him to a young Jeff Green. And I know some of you might be thinking, Jeff Green, that doesn't make any sense. Well, I'm talking Supersonics young Jeff Green. I'm not talking old Jeff Green. Jeff Green's got bunnies, man, and he's athletic. He could defend, and if he even comes even 70% or 60% of what Jeff Green was, that would be a smash hit for the Heat after just getting him as a UDFA. And I do believe that this could be a role player for the Miami Heat, not only this year, but definitely in the foreseeable future. And I have been very on record for saying this. And I think if you go back to our live show when the Heat were drafting at 43 before they traded back one spot and took Paul Larson at 44, I gave a list of prospects I thought the Heat could or should draft with that 44th pick. Keshad Johnson was on the list. Like, I would have been very, very okay with him being the pick for Miami at 44. Obviously, they went with Paul Larson, who I also believe is going to be quite good. But Keshad Johnson kind of outplayed him for most of Summer League before he ended up getting hurt and spraining his ankle right before the Heat's magical Summer League postseason run there. But if he was the 44th pick and was on a standard contract, I think we'd be talking about Keshad Johnson as an impact player for the Heat more than we are right now. And I got more to talk on Keshad Johnson, but I do have to let you know Prize Picks is back, the #1 daily fantasy sports app who has more than 5 million users on a daily basis, is back sponsoring the show, and I could not be more excited. Y'all know if you watched our watch parties throughout the last year, I play Prize Picks on a daily basis, and I still do that. So I got some selections for the long term, also taking advantage of the specials and promotions that Prize Picks have, because they offer a ton of promotions, including this one right here, where you can get more than half a significant strike for Israel Adesanya. And then you pair that up with season-long projections, which you can do right now for basketball and for football, more than Tua Tagovailoa 25.5 passing touchdowns, and more than Bam Adebayo 9.8 rebounds per game. 5 times my money here, but you can actually win up to 100 times your money with Prize Picks right now. Yes, you heard that correctly. 4 picks, as little as that's all you need, 10 into 1,000. And you can also look to week 1 of the football season. Caleb Williams passing yards, all you need is 1 to get Prize Picks every week in September. That's unbelievable, folks. And you can also go with Tyreek Hill. His number's already set at 90.5 for week 1. There's so many other projections for the first week of the football season starting up in a month or so. So get started today with Prize Picks. I play them on a daily basis. You should too. Just pick more or pick less. It's really that simple. And when you download the Prize Picks app today, use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Or you can go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for that first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's go back a couple months here to June 27th, when the Heat ultimately signed Keshad Johnson as a UDFA. I thought this was very fascinating to see from the Heat's assistant GM, Adam Simon, who reported and said in the post-draft press conference that Keshad Johnson was the highest non-drafted player on their board. So it's obvious to me that the Miami Heat really liked his skill set and his potential to fit on this Heat roster. So they obviously rated Paul Larson higher if they took him at 44, but they also liked Keshad Johnson quite a bit. And we've talked about his athleticism, his production, but this is the part that really impressed me is with his three-point percentage a year ago. He's a very durable player, playing 36 games for the Wildcats last year, but his shot up to 38.7% from 3. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, though, like that wasn't the case. So to see that wild improvement from Arizona or from San Diego State to Arizona might have just given the Heat like, okay, well maybe he can really transition to that next level. And Johnson actually did shoot pretty well for the Heat in the Summer League, which we'll get to in just a second. But make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we are going to have daily coverage of the Miami Heat on the channel, whether it be news, rumors, or Heat breakdowns just like this one. Make sure you are subscribed so you never miss a thing of Miami Heat basketball. And when watch parties return in a month or so for the preseason, we will be live for those as well. Let's get to 14K ASAP. Now, I'm not showing you the same exact stats, I promise you. Now, they are very similar. Um, it's actually funny. I should have put them up side by side, to be honest, on a little player two stat comp. A little behind the scenes action here for you at home. But at the Summer League, he played extremely well. Only playing 6 games due to that ankle injury he suffered halfway through, but this includes the California Classic as well, where he averaged 25.4 minutes a game. So he played a lot, averaged damn near the same points, same rebounds, averaged 1.5 steals, shot 39% from three, and 49% from field. And the three-point percentage is the key part to me. And we mentioned that with his college stats, because when you jump from college to the NBA, there's obviously added length in your three-point shot where it comes from a little bit farther out. So rookies tend to have a little bit of a dip in their three-point efficiency going from college to the NBA. But at least in the first month or so with the Summer League, his stats didn't take a dip. They actually went up a full percentage. So that's a really positive thing for Keshad Johnson as well. But the most impressive thing, and is what could possibly get him in the Heat's rotation year one, is that he was the best defender at Summer League. I know people are going to point to Kel'el Ware. Ware was an excellent deterrent inside the paint and a good rim protector. But overall, in terms of their defensive impact, when Keshad Johnson was on the court, there was no one having a bigger impact than him. He could switch on to ones. He could switch on to twos, threes, fours. He even was entrusted to play small ball five at times because how bad Neil Sacco and Warren Washington were. So when Kel'el Ware went to the bench, there was a lot of times where Johnson ended up playing center at 6'6" and a quarter with that 6'10" and a quarter wingspan. And he was holding his own because that size he's got. I want to mention that again. The 224-pound frame that he has is all muscle. He's built like a truck, and when you mix in that with his speed and vertical ability, you create a very dynamic person who can play multiple positions and impact the game in transition and on the defensive side of the floor. Now, with all of this hype being said, I do want to tone it down a little bit here because I do believe it is going to be hard for him to really have impactful minutes this season for the Miami Heat. I can try to hype up Keshad Johnson as much as we want here, and I do want to continue to hype him up, but I don't see a way he really impacts this team crazy this season. Unless injuries incur, which probably would happen because the Heat have had terrible injury luck over the past 3 or 4 seasons. Like, he is just on a two-way deal, and they're not going to elevate him to a standard contract this season due to the fact that they are right up against the second apron, and it doesn't matter if they get a UDFA on a standard deal, a vet min on a standard deal. If they added someone to this roster to get 15 players rather than the 14 they have currently, it would push them into the second apron of the luxury tax, which has a lot of restrictions and limitations on you as a team, and they're not going to enforce that style on themselves for Keshad Johnson, as unfortunate as it is. But let me know, will Keshad Johnson get a standard contract soon? I'd say give it a 24, or not 24 hours, give it 365 days. By this time next season, will Keshad Johnson be on a standard contract for the Miami Heat? Not this year. And I kind of mentioned that a second ago just because of the luxury tax situation and them being right up against the second apron. I do actually think, though, he will end up getting a standard contract from the Miami Heat next year. Think about what the Heat have on their roster right now. They have Josh Richardson entering the final year of his deal. They have Thomas Bryant entering the final year of his deal. They signed Alec Burks to a 1-year contract. Duncan Robinson has an early termination option for next year where the Heat can save $10 million. They'd still be on the hook for 9, but it wouldn't be the full 19 if they wanted to cut him. So there are a lot of ways and avenues for the Heat to have quite a lot of roster spots open next year with some vet min contracts coming off the books and potentially cutting Duncan Robinson. That might open up the pathways to get players like Zion Pullen if he plays well as a two-way this year. Isaiah Stevens, Josh Christopher, Keshad Johnson on standard contracts next season. And that's kind of where I think that's going to go. Not going to happen this year. I think he'll hopefully play in Sioux Falls this season for the Heat. Maybe come up and play a couple games in the big leagues if injuries happen and they need someone, because we think Keshad Johnson could slide in and play at least 5 to 10 minutes a game and have a standard role. That's kind of how I think it's going to be. And then next year, Keshad Johnson will ultimately be on a standard contract. All right, that'll do it for today's show. Make sure you follow me over on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff, talking Heat basketball every single day. You want content and updates on Miami between our videos? That's the best place to find it. As always, go Heat, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video.